Hi guys, so I'm gonna read Human Torch number 2, the Namor story. So there's a little at the end, there's like an explanation of how the original Human Torch and Namor were made. So there's like a newspaper, Manhattan Daily Express Special Edition. Extra Extra, New York Fall 1940. Submariner crashes New York again. Fifth columnist in Baltimore strikes an old Gotham. So yeah, Gotham was another city or another name for New York. Namor, the much feared and respected phenomenon from the Antarctic Icelands, once more invades Manhattan by Bill Everett. So this guy made Namor, and this is kind of a creative way to introduce Namor for this story. Say, Mac, what's I hear about the Submariner? Nothing much, Doc. Some reporter just seen him swimming around the battery, looking the town over. Extra. But here's an interesting article. Says that the fifth column is responsible for the sinking of them four newfangled battleship and destroyers in the old Navy shipyards at Baltimore. Yes, I read about that. They've done considerable damage, I understand. Bombed a lot of government property, shipyards, arsenals, armories, training camps, and the like. They should be butchered, the dirty rats. Meanwhile, at the Navy base in Baltimore, just when did the last explosion occur, Lieutenant? Directly across the harbor from the chemical works, sir. Over there, at number 6 dry dock. Sure, it looks like sabotage, Captain. I can't understand how these fifth columnists worked it. Our yards are so closely guarded. That night, Namor, disguised as a dockhand, reads the news in a New York newspaper. Uh-oh, this is getting bad. Looking about to see if anyone is watching, he slips over the side into the water. Better get down to Baltimore right away. Maybe I can stop this. Should be there in 10 or more minutes. I'll get rid of my coat. It might hamper me if I tangle with anyone. As he slips into Baltimore harbor, he sees. What? A German U-boat. What's it doing here? Putting his super-sensitive ear next to the hull, he listens. Pretty quiet. Doesn't seem to be anyone inside. I wonder. Rising to the surface, he finds that night has fallen. Looking back across the harbor. What's that? Looks like a rowboat, and no lights. Fools, they're liable to be run down. Swimming out to within reach of the boat, he hears. Ja, this is working out of swell. A little further, Herman und Max. It looks and though Uncle Flagen meet have the... I can't even understand what he's saying. Ackerson the one of his toys, ja? Another one of the way. So obviously these were Germans. So this was written during World War II. Since they're talking about like fifth columnists, this is before because it was written not fall 1940. So this is like a year before America entered World War II. A moment later, the women in the stern of the boat off their clothes and don artificial lungs. Are we there, Fritz? Sha, let's go. I don't know. They're not women. I don't know. There's no like spaces in the lettering. I can't really understand. But Namor looks on astounded. They climb over the side and disappear into the black water. So, what's the meaning of this? They must be the submarine's crew returning after doing their dirty work on shore. Pretty clever. Leaving and entering the submerged U-boat by the escape hatch. So I can't read handwriting. It says Namor watches silently. The boat now falls back to shore and picks up where war passengers who repeat the process 8 times and something down below the surface. So yeah. Sorry, I'm not. I'm a young person, so I don't understand a lot of handwriting. I only did handwriting in kindergarten, so I'm not good with handwriting. But wasting no time, Namor races from the docks. Should be easy enough to get into the Navy Yard. But once I'm there, what? Anything could happen, I guess, but I intend to find out what this all means. Namor's winged feet carry him lightly over the high cyclone fence surrounding the government property. It's kind of weird seeing Namor, like, fully dressed. Like, usually he's either naked with his underwear on, or, like, he's wearing his, like, black uniform, like, the black, I can't really explain it, like his black shirt or whatever. Rounding the corner of a building, he sees two sentries taking time out for a cigarette. This may be interesting. Eavesdropping, he hears. So you think they'll have no trouble with the Armonk? Nah, they're launching her from number 8 dry dock at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and she'll be plenty well guarded. Nothing can happen. So nothing can happen, eh? I'll lay 10 to 1 that something does. Wasting no time, Namor leaps into the bay once more. Those men from the U-boat weren't out sightseeing tonight, and swims rapidly to his aerial sub. At any rate, I shan't take any chances. I'll be right there. Hope Foma's got the fleet organized. Can't waste any time at all. Early the following morning, Namor's fleet of super aerial submarines wings its way at lightning speed over the sea to America. And an hour or so later, a christening is in full swing at the Navy dry docks in Baltimore. I hereby christen the Armonk. While, with a great roar and rumble, the huge battleship commences to slip down the ways well overhead. Holy smoke, look at those planes! Namor's aerial sub stopped directly above the ship. They're stopped! They're hanging, still in the air. And on the ship's deck, Commander, something's wrong! We're sinking! As the great gray hull strikes the water, it continues to go down, submerging, not floating at all. Suddenly, from Namor's planes in the sky, come long steel cables, 2 from each plane and all supporting odd metal discs, which prove to be magnets and attach themselves to the sinking hull with a terrific clank. As the onlookers watch, puzzled, Namor shouts a command from the window of his flagship. All set, haul in! The crowd utters a sharp gasp as the battleship is miraculously lifted from the water. Jumping catfish, Mike! Do you see that, or am I going nuts? Slowly, the planes move in, towing the ship under them. It ain't possible. What is it? A second later, Namor leaps down from his plane. Put those guns down, fools. Nobody's going to hurt you. Get back, all of you. Keep clear. That ship's coming back in here. Scram, beat it. The crowd falls back, too astonished to resist, and Namor turns to shout a command up to the planes. Ready? Bring her in! And then leaps into the air again, turning only to toss a small capsule containing a note down at the official's rostrum. With a dull thud and rasping of the wool against steel, the ship is lowered onto the ways. As Namor's aerial subs release their magnets and roar array, an officer reaches for the capsule. There's a note on her, Captain. Shall I open it? Of course, fool. Do you think he meant for us to hang it on for Junior's Christmas tree? Read it. I might have warned you of the sabotage, that this ship had been damaged, but you would not have believed me. I know where the saboteurs are located. If you have 3 men meet me at Pier 18 with a light torpedo boat tonight at 9 o'clock, I will show you where they are. Do not attempt to capture me, for it will only bring destruction to you. I'm your friend. Do not abuse this friendship, I warn you. Prince Namor the Submariner. After reading Namor's message, Navy officials decide to play ball with him. At the appointed time, a small, fast torpedo boat races across the harbor to Pier 18. And as Namor steps in the shadows, Well, your curiosity got the best of you, eh? Never mind their wisecracks, Mr. Submariner. What's your game? Come on now, show us where these so-called saboteurs are, if you know. Namor leaps into the boat and directs them to a spot above the submarine. All right, mister. If you doubt me, dive down about 3 fathoms. You'll find a German U-boat there, or I'll eat your hat. Now, I've shown you what are you going to do about it, providing you believe me, of course. Okay, suppose you're not kidding. What can I do about it? I'm not no authority to sink it. We're not at war with anybody. What do you want me to do? That's entirely up to you. You can either sink it on your own responsibility, or let it go to wreak further destruction. Listen, mister, this all makes a very interesting little piece of melodrama, but as I told you before, I cannot sink a foreign submarine, especially one which I'm not sure even exists. All right, why don't you send one of your men down? It's only about 18 feet down there, and no one in the sub would see him. Well, I don't know. I suppose it's worth a try. I'll go, Captain. I'm a fairly strong swimmer. If I don't come up in 3 minutes, you better send someone down for me. I'm not familiar with these waters. So, well, here goes. Splash. Swift as an arrow, the sailor darts down into the cold water, seeking the silent peril. Pressure's getting heavy, but I guess I can make it. And to his amazement, it suddenly looms before him, a great gray shadow, taking form in the German U-boat. His ears are nearly shattered as the huge propeller begins to thrash, and the sea vibrates with churning power. Wow, he wasn't fooling! Wasting not another second, the sailor turns out and races back to the surface. Holy smoke, Captain, he was right. There is a U-boat down there. Or rather, there was. Just as I found it, the motor started and moved off. There, you see, my friend. The submariner doesn't always tell tall tales. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop it? Or will you let it get away from you? Come, speak up, man. Gosh, I don't know. My hands are tied. I can't do anything. Well, if that's the way you feel about it, okay. I only try to help you in your fool nation. But if this is all it means to you, well, I bet I'll be seeing you. As Namor leaps across the stern of the torpedo boat, he reaches out and slams the trigger lever of the depth-charge mechanism. With a crack and a whine, the ash can soars into the air. Namor hits the water and disappears. Forming an arc, the deadly cylinder dives down, smashing the water's surface. Plunk. And suddenly Namor's head pops up. Ahoy there! Get under way fast! Heeding Namor's timely warning, the pilot jams the throttle and the torpedo boat leaps away. It explodes. Boom! Soaring high into the air to avoid the detonation. Namor looks down on the churning muddy ring of water. Lucky shot. Must have hit direct midships. Then dives down to investigate the damage. Better make sure she's finished. But to his surprise, he finds the U-boat only slightly impaired and still under power, plowing through clouds of mud disturbed by the explosion. Holy mackerel! So it missed! That's not good. Yet on second thought, maybe it's just as well. The American public should know about these rats. They should be brought in the open, given a trial, and hung in the public square. Wheeling about suddenly, he radios to his aerial sub. I've got an idea. And a few moments later is cleaving the water at a 100-mile-a-minute speed. I'll fix these smart guys. In a flash, he darts over the escaping submarine, the two long cables of the grappling magnets trailing loosely. With a dull clank, the magnets attach themselves to the U-boat's deck, and Namor's aerial sub roars on, towing its captive behind. Ha ha, you dirty lice! I've got you this time. Inside the submarine, all is confusion. Donnerweiter! It looks like one of the submariner's plane. He's got it hodged with some kind of grabbing hooks or something. Quick, men, to the torpedo room. If he is in front of us, we can hit him with the torpedoes. All together now, let's go. Madly, the crew rushes to slam a torpedo into its tube. A moment later, a muffled click, a great hiss, and the deadly missile is shot from the submarine's nose. Unaware of this unexpected danger, Namor banks the aerial sub to change his course, and the torpedo misses by inches. Through the windshield, Namor catches a glimpse of the slender tube. Why, the dirty backstabbers! Realizing that more torpedoes may follow, Namor quickly noses his plane to the surface and, spotting land, speeds towards it, beaching the U-boat. This'll hold you, babies. The shock of the impact loosens the magnets, and Namor roars away, leaving the submarine stranded. 10 minutes later, in a store in a little town on the coast of New Jersey. Hello, Coast Guard. You'll find the crew of a Nazi U-boat stranded on a shoal about 40 miles from Cape May, with their craft beached there if you hurry. Leaving a perplexed storekeeper and a bewildered Coast Guard, Namor rushes back to his plane and soars on to new adventures and further issues of Marvel Comics. So sorry about that. So this isn't the end of the video. That isn't the end of the video. I forgot to read these two things explaining how Human Torch and Namor were made. So the story of the Human Torch, Carl Burgos' hot idea. Carl Burgos was sitting halfway between his drawing board and his typewriter when we barged into his compact little studio. How about an interview, Carl? We asked. Fire away. We learned that he was born in New York City in uptown Manhattan about 24 years ago. He told us that he had gone to school there and had held every lab job he ever had in the city. We queried him on the Human Torch. You'd be surprised how I happened upon the Human Torch, he said. It was the 4th of July last year, a beastly hot day. The heat moved across my drawing board in heavy waves, so thick I could feel it. To make matters worse, I just had a hot discussion with my publisher. He wanted a new character, something brand new and angle, which had never been done before. I was all hot and bothered. I tacked my brain until my head began to swim. At my wit's end, I decided to lie down for a while and try to cool off. I lay there for about 15 minutes like a man sick with jungle fever. My pulse pounding, the room suddenly seemed to take a red glow. Suddenly in the room stormed my publisher, demanding to know where the new character was. In a daze, I told him to go to the devil, that gentleman being rather on my mind. I hoped he would go away, but he didn't. His timing only added to the rapidly mounting heat of the room. He called to my attention the fact that I was letting down my public. As he spoke, the room seemed to fill with boys and girls all shouting hotly that they wanted a new character, screaming with this artificial fever. I told them all to go to the devil. At this, they rushed in and grabbed me, and I fainted. When I awake, I was lying in a bed of red-hot coals. I figured this must be the large furnace of a building. I was terrified for an instant until I realized that I could stand the heat. I was burning. Outside the door of the furnace, I could hear the laughter of my publisher and the children, but was rapidly fainting from the roar of the fire was filling my ears. A hot draft fanned on the flames, and I could feel myself being drawn up in the chimney. I seemed to float. My body was lighter than the air, and for a horrible minute I found myself hurtling up through the sooty brick chimney. Like any other skyrocket, I shot to a great height in a blazing arc. I was relieved to find that I was gradually drifting back to Earth. I finally alighted on the roof of an office building, and I quickly ran to cover as my blaring feet were leaving smoking prints on the tar roof. In the building, I heaved a sigh of relief, but I recognized it as the place my publisher had his office. I believed that if he could do this to me, he should know how to make me normal again. I went to his office, being careful to walk only on the tile flooring. I pushed open this frosted glass door and stood face to face with him. The red glow from my body lighted up his face. His astonishment turned to delight, and he called the members of his staff. As they all crowded around him, he cried, pointing to me, "There's a new character, a Human Torch." Burned up, I rushed at him, but stumbled. Then the scene faded. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on the floor of my studio, feeling much better than before it all happened. But, Carl, we smiled. You tell it as if it really happened. He looked us squarely in the eyes. You may not believe me, but my publisher was not a bit surprised when I showed him my new feature, the Human Torch. He acted as he'd known all the time. We left shortly after that, closing the door quietly behind us. So I guess he took drugs or something, or he had a fever dream, or he's taking LSD. But Bill Everett's Hurricane. So the story of the Submariner. Is this Is this Submariner or is this like another character? Anyway, it was raining pretty hard when we reached Bill Everett's apartment studio, a dramatic background for the story we hope to get. Hello, Bill, we smiled. Mind if we annoy you for a while? Come on in, Bill said, beaming. I was hoping somebody would drop in on me tonight. True to style, he made us feel right at home. We come to ask you to tell us something about yourself. And how you started to write about the Submariner. Do you mind? Well, Bill said, I was born in Newton, Massachusetts, and I'm still young enough to be in that first draft. And when I was very young, my folks went out to Arizona. We stayed there until after I finished high school. But my folks decided to go back to Massachusetts, and I decided to go back to school. I went to the Vesper George Art School, where I made up my mind that I would make art a career. While I was studying, I worked in a large advertising agency, but I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to do newspaper work, so I landed a job at the New York Herald Tribune after doing a turn at the art staff of the Boston Traveler. Later, I was the art director of a national magazine, but there my flair for cartooning was somewhat stifled, so I freelanced around until I broke into the field as the art editor of Funnies Inc., the outfit that created the features that appear in Marvel Comics. But Bill, we asked, where did you pick up the idea of the Submariner? That's another story. You see, when we returned to the East Coast, I found just as much adventure as I did in the West. What I mean is, I got myself a job as a seagoing tramp that went from Maine to Florida on one run when we were still a day out at Florida. One of the native Floridian hurricanes hit us broadsides. It shook that old tub like it was a toy. I happened to be on the wheel, and the full force of the storm spun it like a top. One of the bigger men took over for a minute, for there was another job to be done. The wireless antenna had been blown down, and it meant a climb up the slippery slope or rope sleighs to the top of the mast. I was elected. I climbed into my oilskins and started up. The wind cut my face and hands, and all I could do was hold on. The rigging was wet and slippery. My job was to carry that loose wire up and tie it back to the mast. While I finally reached the top and stood upright to the cross trees, the wind lashed my oils, and they cracked like thunder. Suddenly, after I had done my job, I felt myself being swept off my perch into thin air. I grabbed and luckily caught the end of a rope. I swung there, half dazed for a moment, only to realize that my hand was slowly slipping off the wet hemp. Below, I could see the wash decks glaring up at me. The cold wind had numbed my spirit, and a strange feeling came over me. I felt like I was not alone. Something seemed to take a hold of me and lifted me bodily back to the cross trees. I lay there for a moment, and when I finally got a grip on myself, I looked up to see who or what had helped me. There was no one there. We couldn't help but notice the sincere look in Bill's eyes as he spoke. Ooh, that was a corker, Bill, but where does the Submariner come in? He smiled that slow smile of his and said, Who knows? To me, it was he who helped me that night. For the duration of that trip, I was constantly reminded of Coleridge's Ancient Mariner, the poem that tells about the supernatural powers of the sea. I suppose that had some bearing on my title, Submariner. To me, I owe my life to that something, whether wind, a strong subconscious motion, or a supernatural being, but I shall always think of it as my friend, the Submariner. So that's the end of the video there. So that's an interesting story. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he got into like almost a shipwreck. That's pretty. I never knew it was that complicated for that story, but how Namor was created. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, that'd be appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.